Today, we have leading experts from the public sector, from the private sector, we have from academia, and we have from the civil society to reflect on the national and the regional transformative approaches to climate change, adaptation, and mitigation. It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists in order of how they appear on my screen. I will introduce Ms. Indu Wirasuri. Indu is the former Deputy Director General for the Urban Development Authority in Sri Lanka. You're welcome to the panel, Indu. The next person is Dr. Sunil Shrestha. Dr. Shrestha is the Vice Chancellor for the Nepal Academy of Science and Technology. You're welcome to the panel, Dr. Sunil.
Thank you very much.
And I will introduce Ms. Divya Sharma. Ms. Sharma is the Executive Director of the Climate Group in India. You're welcome to the panel as well, Divya.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being here.
Thank you. We will be waiting for our other panelists, Mr. Hammad Khalique and Mr. Manik Mahmud to join us. While we expect them, it's good for us to start our conversation and just go directly. I think the purpose of today's session is to reflect on climate change, on the different approaches and from across the different disciplines. Ms. Indu, my question would be to you first to kickstart this conversation. It's widely acknowledged that urban planning seeks to manage the use and development of land in a way that considers, confronts, and resolves the conflict between demand for growth, for social equity, and the environment as a whole. I think this is a well-known responsibility of urban planning as a profession. We know that there are so many tools available within urban planning to really manage the environment and the land and to create this collaboration. So my question to you is, what are the main observations on the level of attention given to climate change holistically in urban planning in Sri Lanka and in South Asia? And also, how can climate mitigation and adaptation be integrated into urban planning?
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for having me for this very good session. Yes, first allow me to talk about the Sri Lanka. And as you all are aware, the Sri Lanka currently does not have an explicit national urban policy. But Sri Lanka has passed some milestone in urban planning policies at the national level. The country National Physical Planning Department, the country, that means the National Physical Department, developed the National Physical Planning Policy, and the plan integrated climate change action into the plan. And the National Physical Department has the legal provisions to prepare the regional plans and local plans also, non-declared areas of the country. This National Physical Planning was identified the best starting point. Why just I want to highlight that point? Because National Physical Planning Department has the legal provisions to prepare the national, regional, and the local. That's very easy. Then when they prepare the National Physical Planning and the policy, they can integrate all kind of national climate action into the regional plan as well as the local plan. Not only that, and the regional plan, normally when Sri Lanka prepared this National Physical Plan, they had the series of stakeholder involvement, not only Sri Lanka and the other experts from the different type of field. And especially in Sri Lanka, we have the Climate Change Secretariat and the special unit under the Ministry of Environment. Therefore, they prepare a National Physical Plan integrating climate change action. When I just think about the other countries, as I know, under most of the countries, try to mainstream the climate change into national urban policies or national fiscal plan. Some of the South Asian countries already mainstreaming climate change into the national urban policies with the support of some donor agencies. I can well remember, and the UN Habitat and the Rockefeller Foundation, and under there are different type of program. There is the Climate Change Initiative and the Climate Change Resilient Network. Under this program, they try to introduce national fiscal, national, and especially national policies integrating urban planning. Okay, and normally when we consider the other part of the areas, as you are well aware, and the many cities, they are very clear that in many cities, climate change was not yet recognized as an urban concern when they formulate city strategies and when they formulate the implementation program. And despite this fact, many cities have integrated some concern either into the existing programs or into the sectoral plans. And especially our South Asian countries, when we go through their local plan and the regional plans, we can see, and the sectoral wise, of course, they already integrated or mainstreaming into the climate change action into that one. But I'm happy to mention that all South Asian countries have rectified the Paris Agreement, committing to the national determined contribution that specify their plans to reduce national greenhouse gas emission and adapt to the impact of the climate change. As part of the Paris Agreement, not only that, and most of the Asian countries agrees to submit to the new or updated NDC next 5 years. Apart from our climate change policies, in Sri Lanka, already we prepared the climate change adaptation strategy and the NDC. We have the separate unit, separate secretariat, and nowadays, we try our best to integrate it into the climate change into the local plan. In a nutshell, because with the time limit, just as a first round, I'll give these answers. At the latter stage, I'll explain in detail.
Thank you, Indu. It's actually exciting to know that the climate change is being mainstreamed into physical planning at all levels in Sri Lanka and regionally as well. Thank you for that. I will go to Dr. Sunil and I'll come back with the question to you as to in terms of implementation, how is that being carried out? But I will come back to you on that, Indu. Dr. Sunil, as an academia, as someone in academia, and we know that rapid acceleration of innovative technology has enabled collaboration and provided continuity and resilience during the pandemic. And this will continue to drive future resilience against climate change in future. From your perspective, to what extent is Nepal and the region, the South Asia region, utilizing the technological and learning opportunities available to address climate change? And particularly in higher education, to what extent has climate change and environmental crisis been addressed in the curricula in Nepal?
Thank you so much, moderator Olafini, for nicely introducing me and raising this very important area of concern. First of all, I would like to extend my warm greetings from Nepal to you all. I will also take this opportunity to extend my sincere thanks to the organizer for giving me this wonderful opportunity to put my views in this summit. It gives me a great pleasure to congratulate and thank every one of you who are contributing to make this summit a grand success. Regarding to your first part of the questions, I want to begin with a little background of Nepal and the South Asian region. Nepal is a landlocked mountainous country in the South Asia. It has a 10 highest Himalayan mountains, famous as the water towers, including the Mount Everest, lying within our borders. And Nepal is one of the most vulnerable countries to the impact of climate change. And Nepal ranks 12th in the Global Climate Risk Index of the most vulnerable countries in 2019. And it has mentioned the ambitious mitigation and adaptation plans in its second nationally determined contribution submitted to the UNFCCC. However, it is adopting the new as well as the improved technologies to reduce its energy use and move towards the clean energy technologies and the interventions for the sectors like the transportation, agriculture, human settlement, etc. It seems very difficult to achieve the targets due to the COVID pandemic and other kind of the results. By 2030, Nepal is planning to expand the clean energy generation from approximately the 1400 megawatt to the 15,000 megawatt, of which the 5 to 10% will be generated from the mini and micro hydro power, solar, wind, and bioenergy, and ensure the 15% of the total energy demand is supplied from the clean energy sources. Electrical vehicles will be used to lower the GHG emissions, as the government is implementing the plan to create the new cities with the concept of smart cities, technologies, and innovation in the planning and the development of such cities would reduce not only the energy demand, but also the climate change vulnerability of the society. I think similar kind of the intervention is practicing in the South Asian regions. The utilization of the clean, digital, and satellite technological opportunities is imperative in the face of unprecedented impacts of climate change in the South Asian countries. Though the spectrum of using the such technologies depends on the economic status and the human resources of the countries in this region, set of innovation and the technologies specifically focused on the clean energy technologies are being utilized. The countries of this region needs to be the more responsible based on their economy for generating and utilizing the clean energy technology, converging the technologies like the information technologies, biotechnologies, nanotechnologies, and the cognitive technologies to shift the techno-economic paradigm is equally important in solving the climate crisis in South Asian regions. For instance, if we can use the digital technologies in the agriculture, transportation, health, and the education sectors, and satellite technologies for the weather forecasting, early warning system can be reduced the climate change vulnerability in Nepal. Using such modern technologies like a weather forecasting is practicing, and more reliable for weather forecasting result is coming out and these days, and it providing the opportunity for well preparation for both the government and the community. The government of Nepal, together with the national and international partners, has implemented the various climate change related projects and the programs like the community flood risks and the Gulf risk reduction program, ecosystem based adaptation programs, resilience to the climate related hazard project for Nepal, which also provides the opportunity to access the various kinds of the use of technology and enhancing the capacity to combat the climate induced risks and disaster. Water efficient irrigation technology that protects the crops from the climate induced disaster, low carbon emissions, and the energy efficient technologies, rainwater harvesting, ponds constructed for the groundwater recharge, and the multiple use technologies for the storage, multiple use and efficient use of water productions, and the use of renewable energy, and the use of the energy efficient technologies, climate friendly technologies, and for constructing the infrastructure, including the hydroelectricity, drinking water, and irrigation, and use of the electrical vehicles, and practicing in Nepal. The Nepal, which has a negligible emissions contributions to global warming, but being a physiographical structure and geographic locations, highly vulnerable to the climate risks, so that the Nepal compulsion to take the heavy intervention actions for developing the resilient infrastructure, early warning systems, and adapting the climate-induced impact to combat the disaster that belongs to the climate change. I therefore believe that the Nepal, being a developing country with a weak economic conditions, needs the international support for seeking the climate fund to adopt the appropriate technologies to fight against the climate change. With this view, I stop here regarding the first questions. And regarding your second questions, in Nepal, the school level educations as well as the universities have started to incorporate the environmental issues and the climate change in this in their curricula, and the students are using the geo informations from the weather stations, remote sensing images, and the GIS to analyze the climatic change and generate the knowledge base applicable for informed decision making. And the different organizations that are in the front line of delivering the adaptation programs to the climate change are targeting the schools and universities, students as a knowledge sharing cohort for the community. Most of the countries in the South Asian regions are now quite aware for incorporating the climate change and environmental conservations in their curricula. According to the World Bank study on 2020, the India accounts for 4% of the global total, like the and Pakistan and Bangladesh account for the 0.3% and the 0.2% respectively in the research development expenditure. Nepal has a less than 0.5% of its GDP on the R&D sectors. South Asian countries also lack the innovations focusing on the climate risk management, as they are lacking the advancement in their higher education focusing on the STI. The programs of universities need to be revised. On the other hand, it was well noticed during the COVID crisis in 2020 that South Asian countries are not prepared for delivering the education during the time of crisis. The same could happen in the case of the climate crisis in the region may face in the future. Nepal Climate Change Knowledge Management Center, NCC-KMC, has been created by the collaborative effort of my organization, Nepal Academy of Science and Technology, and the Ministry of Science, Technology and Environment to enhance the public access to the climate change and the related informations in order to build their capacity to address the challenges posed by climate change. And NCC-KMC has already completed the awareness program in 62 districts out of the 77 districts of Nepal. And in such awareness programs, NCC-KMC has been giving the priority to the high school level student capacity development in understanding the climate change risk. And recently, the NCC-KMC has started to provide the research grant with support from the Ministry of Forestry and Environment for bachelor, master, and PhD students who are willing to research, do the research in the field of climate change. For this first round, I just want to stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sunil. That was very detailed, and thank you for that. It's actually exciting as well to see that the priority has been given to capacity building, and the challenge of human resources has actually been identified earlier. So it's good to see that, and to also see that there are actually pragmatic approaches being taken to address the capacity building gap. That's a very good one, and I'm sure it creates an opportunity for interdisciplinary learning as well, particularly when you're targeting higher education and secondary school students as well. It's good to note that and see that. We have two other speakers who have now joined us. We have Mr. Hammad Khalique with us. You're welcome. Mr. Hammad Khalique is the Joint Director, Head of Incubation Wing, Punjab Information Technology Board, Pakistan. You're welcome to the panel, Hammad. And we also have with us Mr. Manik Mahmud. Mr. Mahmud is a Cluster Head, Social Innovation, A2I. It's a Prime Minister initiative under the ICT Division and Cabinet Division of Bangladesh. You're welcome to the panel, Manik. And I've also been informed today's your birthday. Happy birthday, and thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you very much. Thank you
during
very
your
much.
birthday.
Okay. So me
I
now
will,
and me now or Sunil?
I will ask I will come back. I have some questions already here for you, but I will first of all ask Ahmad some questions.
Sure.
Being that coming from Pakistan, and the threat of climate change is increasing rapidly. Dr. Sunil has just explained the different challenges that Nepal is facing and the other climate risk, the disaster risks, the hazards, the geographical location of Nepal has. And it's almost like it's the same for a lot of countries in South Asia. The sea level rise, the tropical cyclones, the different dramatic increases in heat. So my question to you, just following on the technological approaches that has been taken in Nepal and particularly in the education, but I'm coming to you in terms of how can this innovative technology facilitate collaboration between governments, between disciplines, between sectors, not only just at a disciplinary level as well, but also at with the regional countries. And how is Pakistan collaborating with other countries for climate mitigation and adaptation? Ahmad, over to you. We can't hear you clearly.
No, not clear.
No. We can't hear you at all. Probably why the Secretariat helps us with sorting this out. I will ask Manik some questions. Okay, probably it will reconnect. I'd ask you some questions. It's still around technology from what we've heard from Nepal. Technology is important to addressing climate change. The technological change on the scale required cannot happen overnight, and definitely, but the scale of climate change emergency requires that promptness, and it's an urgent matter that cannot wait. So there are the different approaches that have been recommended technologically. They have a way of triggering new ways of living and thinking at all levels. So my question is, in Bangladesh, what are the new social innovation ways to help tackle the climate and environmental emergencies? And also, maybe you can just tell us more about how do these new ways interact with the existing services and organizations? You're on mute. You're still on mute?
I was mute. Thank you, Olivia, for the questions. Very good questions, and thank you for inviting me. Just I want to contextualize my point, and now the government has the priority is the digitization Bangladesh, and now 2021 done. So the Bangladesh government has now the priority. A2I's priority now is imagining 2041. Okay, so we have started the dialogue and discussion and planning and budgeting, everything. Everything is 2041. And for 2041, so we have the main focus and the priority is, one is the service digitization, and two is every digitization, every research, anything is for citizens. So citizens is the main thing. So every initiatives, the government priority is to thinking in innovatively, so that innovative digitization for citizens. Okay, so regarding climate, if I say quickly, in Bangladesh, every year flood is compulsory, and other climate issues are there, but flood is a main thing, because it's huge effect in Bangladesh, huge impact in Bangladesh. And city areas, the waste management and pollution and other things there are. So last mile people are mostly impacted for the flood and other things. But city people is impacted by the waste management and environment, other issues. So last mile people mostly, vulnerable people mostly impacted, negatively impacted for the flood and other climate issues. And so they suffer for pure water, food, the business people, and the loss of property. So huge impact. And now the government has a budget line that changed, and they have the climate change related plan, and 20 ministries are there, and they have allocated 7.26% budget for the climate change issue. They developed a climate trust fund, so that to find the innovative solution for the climate change from the young people, from the outside country, NRB, so anything. And recently the government has started to design their broadband policy to make it the citizen friendly, so that last mile people can connect with the internet. So without internet, the service, if the all service is digital, but if they cannot access, nothing. So this is one and fundamental focus, and trying to involve the private sectors, how they can the sandbox, practicing innovation piloting with the government and private sector innovation. And we are reimagining the education. Nepal is saying the education in different way, in Bangladesh is same. So typically the last 10, 12 years, the education system, now is the time they are trying to change everything. So we have started the many digital initiatives to start from the primary education, the adolescent, for the tertiary, so that they can learn from the primary school about the climate change, and they can start learning from the primary and adolescent to innovative solution about the climate change and how the problem solving attitude and practice. Another is a very interesting initiative we have just started this year. It is Civil Service 2031 program. So we're trying to transform the civil service bureaucracy so that they can adapt the change for the 2041. If finally the decision is in bureaucratic process. So if they cannot understand the future Bangladesh, future citizens, future environment, future climate change, and if they don't understand the data leadership, data innovation, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. So policy will make, but that will not implement it. So this is very innovative initiative. And another initiative to address these future issues is Citizen Journalism Bangladesh. So we have a communication and promotion and citizen-centric approach in EDUI. We are working with the government. So thousands and thousands youth and active citizens can be involved, this voluntarily, they can play a role to change the society, solving the problem by community and with the partnership of the private sector and the government. And we are trying to connect the even the hills community, hills community, I mean, who are in the most remote locations. So disability community who doesn't less access in public service, digitalization, and who are mostly affected by the climate change. So the campaign, the initiative, so for the problem solutions, and thousands youth and other peoples, including women, they are involved and they are trying to do. Just I want to finish this point, just one point by the Honorable Prime Minister. 2017 in Bangladesh, the government has decided for every ministry, for every government officials, using social media is must, and they have an order, instruction. Why? It's not for gossiping. Social media for effective public service delivery. In that time, they had an example in a district named Burishal. So in Burishal, there is a 30 years long canal. 30 years ago, it was a clean canal and pure water and green water, but after 30 years, it is a drain. And then the district administration, through the social media, Facebook, started a campaign. Okay, people join, and how we can combinedly clean the canal, and they started 4 months campaign, and after 4 months, 40,000 people jointly one day take an initiative and start cleaning the canal. There was the huge initiative and very interesting, many ministries involved, and after that, many ministries from the allocation fund, and now it is clean, mostly clean, not 100%. But Honorable Prime Minister instructed after the event in Bangladesh, so NGO and the government and the different ministries, please look after all the big rivers, safe. Sundarban, make it fresh, clean, safe. So those are the examples, and it was a case in Bangladesh is happening, and we want to really learn from other countries, Pakistan, Nepal, India, and others, and we can share. I'm sure this is a dialogue, but after the dialogue, we can start another dialogue, so that we can learn from each other. So thank you, Olivia.
Thank you very much, Manik. That's actually a very, very detailed explanation of what is going on in Bangladesh. And it's good to see that, although you didn't mention it, but there is a reference to several targets of the Sustainable Development Goals. You mentioned reaching the communities most affected by the disaster when they occur. You also mentioned gender mainstreaming involving everyone, so leaving no one behind. I picked on that in a lot of your comments. And you actually also touched upon, I think one thing that came across here is that impact on the community and community engagement as well. The Bangladesh is very much focused on community engagement, on active participation of the citizens in transforming the area and in challenging climate change, in adapting to climate change and mitigating the circumstances around it. I also particularly am fascinated by the use of social media for transformation, about the example you've just given about the cleaning of the canal. And I'm sure we will have some questions for you as well afterwards. Participants are advised to please go to the question and answer box to ask your questions. We will pick up on that when it's time for that. We will be having that shortly. I will come back to you, Manik, on some of these points that you have mentioned. You've mentioned how the need to work across the region rather than just within Bangladesh alone, how to collaborate. And I'm sure there should be opportunity for that collaboration. I will come to you with some specific questions on how can this be facilitated in future. I have some questions for you, Divya. Like Manik has mentioned, any successful strategy to address climate change impacts would significantly require not just technology that is available, but also future technologies, and also it would also require innovation as well. And there's this growing interest that the need to collaborate with the public sector, with the private sector, with the civil society. Climate change is not a public sector problem, neither is it solely a private sector challenge as well. So my question to you is, like, what strategies and policies can most effectively foster technological innovation and corporate culture to help? And by corporate culture, I'm referring to corporate governance, private sector, and civil society all working together to help address climate change challenges in India and South Asia. And also, how is the government in India collaborating with corporate organizations, private institutions, civil society to fight climate change?
It's a long question, and there are various trends to the response. I don't know how much time I have, but I will still try to respond to some of the things that you've just mentioned, Olafin. But to start with, thank you very much for having me here, and it's a pleasure being part of Future Cities Summit. Always a pleasure to associate with you people. So I will start with the fact that particularly in Indian cities, climate change is a major issue because it links with the vulnerability of cities. It links with our climate action towards mitigation. It links very closely with economic development, with social well-being, with the issues of health, with the issues of water availability, with the issues of air pollution. And the vulnerability and the risk and hazard that climate change poses to Indian cities and Indian population in general, whether it is urban or rural areas, are immense and need a very holistic, comprehensive analysis as well as response to some of these problems. So Indian government is committed to climate action, and during COP26 also we've kind of, Indian government has resurfaced and realigned their commitment to net zero by 2070. While 2070 looks afar, but we have concrete steps that we had started quite early in the time, and have been one of the few countries who've aligned themselves to the Paris Agreement and the targets that were set towards that feature. Very early on in the year 2008, Indian government had launched 8 missions under the National Action Plan on Climate Change. And one of the mission under those 8 missions was the National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. It was spearheaded by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs to basically set forth the targets set under the Paris Agreement and to see that some of the steps that these cities would take up are in consonance with the NDCs and focus towards one single aim of climate adaptation and combating impacts of climate change as well as mitigation. Our Smart Cities program, which is the national flagship scheme of smart cities, has 100 cities, which are like of lighthouse cities for the entire country that are taking up important steps towards not only climate change, but sustainable urban development, which includes infrastructure, which includes water availability, which includes access to electricity, energy, etc. And, sectors like transport, industries, buildings, and waste. And to that end, very recently, in fact, in 2019, February, within the mission itself, the Smart Cities mission itself, a climate smart cities assessment framework was introduced, which takes up A lot many. It is 24 indicators, so basically 24 areas, but broadly speaking, it includes urban planning, green cover and biodiversity. Second is water management. Third is waste management. It includes mobility and air quality, and it talks about energy and green buildings. And holistically speaking, this system itself allows city to assess themselves toward the progress that they are taking in some of these issues, which will have a long-term effect around how the cities would fare in terms of their climate mitigation, in terms of their adaptation to climate impacts, also long-term resilience to some of these issues, as well as sustainable urban development, going hand in hand with economic development of the countries and economic development of the people who are living in these cities. So that said, briefly speaking about the urban regime and what cities are doing, there is a lot that is happening at the central level. When I talked about this national mission on smart cities, but then at the state level, because urban development is a state subject in India, at state level, a lot more is happening that is enabling the municipal bodies to better manage cities in India. There is a huge lot of work that is need to be done. And the dichotomy when we talk about technology and innovation in India is that at one end, we are looking about disruptive technologies, including the likes of, artificial intelligence, which will help us manage our cities better, which will help us understand the hazards and risks that climate impacts, things like air pollution, are posing to Indian cities. But on the other hand, most of our cities, the small cities, the medium cities, need a lot of influence and work towards basic access to water, to sanitation, to health systems. And when we talk about these, it's a big gap that has to be filled. And all these schemes that are happening at the state level, at the national level, are working towards some of these objectives. While we are talking about state level EV policies to introduce electric vehicles and go for electrification of vehicles, which again is a big area, the transport sector, to be looked at when one is talking about climate mitigation. On the other hand, we are talking about water availability for citizens in urban centers. We are talking about food security. We are talking about efficiency in agriculture. So there are range of sectors and activities that need attention, and cities in India and government in India are working towards those, but it is not devoid of challenges, I would say. And when we are talking about innovation, when we are talking about technological interventions, I always speak that we should think about the poor. We should think about bringing in just transition. We should think about bringing in social cohesion and making these technology an instrument to do that. Um, and I think any of these interventions are quite big scale. The scale of interventions in Indian cities is really huge when we compare it to any European cities or cities of the Western world. And therefore, it is very important that the governments work closely with the private sector to make it happen. And that is where this particular, collaborative effort with partners, CSOs, private companies come into picture. And again, on that front, also a lot is happening, but I don't know if I have time. If there is more time, I would like to speak about it as well. But for now, I think this is my response to your question, and I hope I could get some of the things that you wanted to hear from me.
Yes. Thank you, Divya. Thank you for that. You have mentioned, you've touched on a lot. You've actually explained it across different disciplines and the importance of ensuring that there is a social cohesion in what is taking place and that the technology is used as a tool to enable access.
Yes. So value chains and equity is something that, interventions across value chains, for example, in infrastructure. But equity is something should be central to technological interventions, is what I would like to say.
Thank you for that. That's one point that under the climate justice theme that needs to be addressed more. You touched on an important factor as well when you give an example of the electric vehicles. On one hand, it's good in terms of reducing emission. On the other side, what about affordability? How affordable is it to residents of smaller cities? And even in the large cities, how affordable is it to the residents? And also, is it creating additional pressure in terms of parking space, or are these going to be available for free? And where are the charging points? These are some different conversations that still need to take place. And this is why there is that need for that collaboration and that conversation, as we've started it today, to take place between every discipline and every sector, education not left behind as well in the conversation. I'll come back to you on that, because it would actually be very good to hear more about the examples that you have of projects and on implementation. I want to go back to Indu. I asked the question then about practice as well, about implementation and what's taking place in Sri Lanka. And I have another question for you in terms of where are the opportunities for collaboration and interdisciplinary interactions among nations in the region? This is actually very important. Everyone has touched on the importance of this, and also my earlier question about what is the implementation like of these different policies at national, local, and regional level?
Yeah, that's also very long questions. Okay, I'll try my best to answer one by one. Yeah, as others mentioned, and the normally our frontline, the cities are the engine of the economy. And when you just look at the most of the cities in South Asia countries are located at the coastal level, and like Nepal and other places in the hilly country. But so these cities has a lot of disaster risk as well as the climate risk. Then when we talk about your first question, how we are going to using as a planner, how we can integrate especially the climate change into urban planning. And when we talk about the especially policies, and sometimes you can see in the different countries, in Sri Lanka also we have the climate change policy, and then the disaster management policy, and the national physical planning policy, national local government policy. There are so many policies, but these are sectoral as well as not integrated. And based on these policies also, and the government and the subnational government and the local government try to prepare the local level plans. The problem is, and when they convert it into strategies and action, it's not clear and how much they can allocate funding for this type of project, especially the climate change action, and whether when they are going to work with the different type of actors and players, and how they can get their intervention, and especially their involvement. And the climate change, actually you can't address in the one ministry or a one department or a local government or a citizen. We have to work as a team, and the regional wise also same. And when we consider the South Asia region, actually we have so much of showcase successful development centered climate action. And we can highlight globally important issues related to climate risk and opportunities. As mentioned, Ms. Divya, India is already embark so much of the program. India is the world's third largest emitter, but also now has the world's fifth largest solar photovoltaic market, with also for the gigawatts of the total installed capacity. And the third, Bangladesh is often cited as one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change, but it is happy to note that, and the gain in recognizes for its progress on drastically reducing death from cyclone and other extreme events. Actually, these are the successful stories. These are the lessons learned. And we can share our knowledge, and we can share the lesson learned among the countries. And the Bhutan is the world's first carbon the negative country, with 60% of the land area as officially mandated the forest cover, while Dr. Sunil very clearly mentioned about the Nepal community-based forest and the other activities. The very good and we can especially the innovative methods and the land as a planner, because when we talk about the urban planning method, we have so much of the new tools and the building codes and the land uses, the special guide development plans, and especially the rainwater harvesting, so much of activities and the tools. And in some countries, like because Sri Lanka actually we are very, but otherwise we are exposed to the landslide, rock falling, so many things. But the management of we have the different type of specialized agencies in Sri Lanka regarding the, especially the land slides and the different type of hill countries disasters. We have the one special agency, then the disaster management is there, but we have to work as a team. As other one is Ms. Divya very correctly pointed out, because we have to work with the people, because this is climate change is still, and the real meaning is not to go to the people. While we are doing the community planning, and we have to start it from that. And the urban planning, you can't have the standalone plan. Always we have to prepare the integrated plan and addressing environment, social, physical, as well as the economic. When we consider the southern region, what we can see, and the South Asia, and we have the very good ideas, innovative methods, and the very good tools, but unfortunately, we do not have enough financial resilience among us. Therefore, and if we want to go to the next step, and we have to enhance resilience. But if you say resilience, we have to think about the social resilience, we have to think about the environment resilience, we have to think about the economic resilience. And here is I have to stress the word social resilience. Though you have the policies, though you have the plans, though you have the innovative methods, but if you do not have the involvement of the people and to enhance or improve the social resilience, it is very difficult to work at the ground level. Therefore, and the main suggestion is, when we are doing the especially the urban planning, because my area is urban planning, and Olafin asked me to talk about the urban planning. When we talk about the urban planning, I want to highlight the things, and we have to prepare the integrated plan and addressing mitigation, adaptation. And the other thing is the special one, having the updated data and the information. Without having the updated information, you can't take the decision regarding the climate change. It is variation. It's vary from day to day and vary from time to time. And now the intensity is very high in the, especially the South Asia. And when we study the rainfall pattern, and when you examine the temperature, what we can see is the variation and the intensity. Therefore, and especially we have to have the updated data. For that, you can use the satellite images, you can see the GIS, as others mentioned, and so much of the new tool mechanism as well as the approach. And when one country or a Sri Lanka or any other country, if you develop this type of thing, and we can share with the other neighboring countries, because sharing knowledge is very, very essential. And the lesson learned also we can share with the other countries. And the India always having a different type of because they have the very, very the large cities compared with the other cities. Actually, we have only the few cities in Sri Lanka, and the share data on the collective risk without limiting to the boundaries. Because say this is Sri Lanka because we are an island. Without limiting to that boundaries, we have to cross the boundaries. And or nation, without thinking about the nation, then we have to reform and harmonize the common, especially the climate policies, and build trust through the shared infrastructure and the technical know-how.
Thank you, Indu. I have to cut in there because of time. Thank you for that explanation. Thank you so much. I'm taking from that the need for knowledge sharing and lesson learned, really the need for knowledge sharing among the different countries in the region. I'm taking that as a theme in terms of in all areas, and how has it been how has the climate change mitigation and adaptation been integrated into other disciplines. It should also be shared among the different countries in the region. My next question would go to Dr. Sunil. Indu has just mentioned so many different opportunities for collaboration, and she's also mentioned a challenge, which is funding, finance as a challenge. We know that silo working would definitely lead to financial wastage. So from a university perspective and higher education perspective, is there any collaboration with other universities or educational institutions in the region to ensure that the knowledge is being shared across region and efforts are not being duplicated in research, in activities?
Yeah.
I think this is very important questions you have raised. Thank you so much for raising these important questions. My direct response is yes. In Nepal, in 2009, a climate change council was constituted under the chairmanship of Prime Minister and consisting of the experts to maintain the policy coordinations in the area of climate change, and the multi-stakeholder climate change initiative coordination committee was formed to coordinate the plans and programs pertaining to the climate change. And likewise, the climate change management divisions has been established in a Ministry of Forestry and Environment, and which is designated the focal point of the conventions to coordinate with the different levels and sectors for overall affairs of the climate change. The National Planning Commission of Nepal has been using the climate change budget code so that we can find out how much budget is expended in the climate change related things in the different sectors. Likewise, the Alternative Energy Promotion Center was initiated. Activities to look after the activities relating to clean development mechanism by establishing a climate and the carbon unit. In Nepal, we have the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority, NDRRMA, to tackle all kinds of the disasters, including the climate change induced disaster in coordination of all the sector agencies. I think somehow the similar kind of the mechanism are also available in the other parts of the South Asian region. R&D institutions have collaborations and the learning sharing mechanisms that needs to be strengthened in the days to come. And the common research on regional impacts of climate change, adaptation and mitigation measures with the technological innovations, interventions needs to be discussed and agreed upon among these South Asian countries. The state of art of knowledge and common agenda for the technological interventions in the South Asian countries could be negotiated strongly among the global communities once the mutual collaboration is established and seriously work together jointly. For this, the R&D institution must take the lead for the sectoral collaborations and the coordinations. And the NAST, Nepal Academy of Science and Technology, which is the apex body of Nepal looking after the science and technology, is trying our best to develop the partnership and collaborations between the institution within the country and also the international communities and the international university and organizations working in scientific research and innovations, including the education sector. So we have to started the partnership programs at NAST. What I believe that the collaborations have to be extended in the South Asian region and the beyond, as the science and the climate change both do not have the border. Science diplomacy, enhancing the international collaboration need to be fully utilized to combat with the global problem like the COVID pandemic and the climate change. NAS is collaborating with a number of national and international scientific organizations with having the MOU and the further enhancing the science diplomacy for international scientific collaborations and the knowledge exchange. NAS is trying to establish the Science Diplomacy Forum in Nepal in partnership with the concerning organizations. Finally, what I want to emphasize here is that in the context of combating the pandemic and the global challenge of the climate change, science diplomacy can play a vital role, and it has to be the integral part of the foreign policy. I think I have to stop here due to the time limitation. Thank you very much. Over to you, Olafin.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sunil. You have touched on a lot of relevant points. The need to strengthen collaboration and the need for science diplomacy, and also science without borders, not just limiting it to the national border or the regional border, but making sure the knowledge is shared across the different regions or continents, if we have to put it that way. Thank you for that. Manik, I'll come to you you have been trying to give some examples on how Bangladesh has engaged the citizen in climate change adaptation and mitigation and in addressing environmental emergencies. So what other ways in terms of digital technology can be harnessed to help create these collaborations just between, not just between the citizen and Bangladesh, but also across South Asia? And also, you were touching on some points around the need for collaboration and knowledge sharing. And what are the practical ways for this to be able to take place in the future? What should be done, or what can be done to start facilitating this?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Very good question. And my earlier discussion, I have a little mentioned the point. It is important for Bangladesh. So, we have a mandate by the prime ministers and the ICT advisors. So the mandate to Bangladesh will have to be knowledge donor by 2025, at least for 50 countries. So we are dreaming the point to reach the 2041. So last for 12, 15 years, we have many digitization experience and government transformation experience. And I think we have less experience. Now we are trying to learn, trying to gauge how the citizens can be more engaged in innovation, in service design, co-creation, human-centered design. That is the main focus now, because we have enough digitization, we have enough experience, but now we need citizen engagement and citizen learning. On that point, we are trying to learn from every country. So how Nepal is doing, how Pakistan is doing, how Australia is doing, how any rich country is doing, how Sri Lanka is doing, how India is doing. So okay, so what many initiative, one is very significant in pandemic situation. We have learned using a tool 333 that was just a service information but in the pandemic that has been the 10 times higher used. The citizen call for food, citizen call for health, call for many supports, and this has been the mainstream tool. So like I'm giving one example, and we have a integrated GRS, I mean grievance redressal system. So any last mile people can call the government or write any complaint to the central government or the local government. I am not getting the service, and that can see through the dashboard honorable Prime Minister, ministers, and the secretaries. So that we have started, and the interesting insights. When you go to the people, when you ask the last mile people, so do you know about the government services? Most of the people, they say no. Why no? Why you don't know? So how do you want to know? So we have trying to design to engage the last mile citizens, how they can share their demands, how they can share their problems, and what are the challenges are there. We are trying to capture all of them, because it's a colonial mindset in the citizens, in the civil service. So most of the citizens in the rural area, they fear to complain anything, because for a widow woman, maybe 65 years old, she is not getting properly safety net allowance. But when I ask her, so if it is stopped for 2 months, so did you ask anyone? I say no. I talked with a union Parishad member. So I said, why? Who doesn't have any role? But the perception, but the mindset is she will talk to the union Parishad. But technology developed, she can do everything through the mobile. She has mobile, but many times don't give. This is the perception. So these are the challenges we are facing and struggling. So we want to learn from you. So why not after the dialogue, we can make a plan, a series of dialogue. Maybe we have a customers innovation lab. We can start dialogue one by one. Maybe one dialogue, maybe one citizens issue, one dialogue, maybe emerging technology, one dialogue, maybe data leadership, one dialogue, maybe civil service 2041. So maybe any country can facilitate any item who has the best practice, more practice on this. So Olivia, so I request you to create so that we can make a decision from the dialogue. Otherwise, this is a discussion, this is a talk. That's a meaningless. So if we can make a plan, so we can start the dialogue about the citizens, civil service 2040 on data leadership, maybe Nepal do one thing. So it would be great. I will be very happy if we can, after the dialogue, start another email discussion for making a plan for the next steps ahead. So what do you think, guys? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manik, and I support that notion. It's actually very important that we move from dialogue to action-based activities, action-based meetings and plans. And I'm sure the Secretariat are taking this on board, and we will definitely hear from Future Cities Summit, the Good City Foundation, on this more. This is this is vital and very important in addressing this. And I can see that we are almost running out of time, but I want to give Divya the opportunity as well to you wanted to touch on some points earlier on, and I think you can give us some examples of these initiatives, and also what are the challenges? What do you think is hindering collaboration? Manik has called for this action-based lab for us to discuss more regionally. What do you think are the challenges, are the hindrances? Because it's good to know this, to take this on board when designing this action lab.
Thank you for that, and I'll be brief. I'm conscious of the time. So as I was talking earlier, um, particularly in terms of urban resilience and climate action in the urban areas, I just want to bring some theory to this conversation. This is a very important maxim that architects are told, which are given by this was given by famous architect called Louis Sullivan, which says form follows function. And I'll use this analogy here. Technology, and we were talking about technology previously in my first response to you. Technology that is devoid of planning would result into poor retrofits on aging city systems, or would create dysfunctional new ones. So any technology that cannot make a city functionality competent is a waste of resources. Even if it is a technology that helps in adaptation, or it is a mitigation technology, so to say, and if we are talking around climate change, um, vulnerability reduction. So technology, when we are talking about technology, unlike popular notion, it is not cosmetic. It should have deeper applicability. And this is one of the challenges also that I would like to, bring to the table, that um, we are very keen in adopting new technologies. We are very keen in adopting technologies that are being used successfully in the West. But we need to contextualize these technologies to our local context. And therefore, um, local contextualization, understanding the local challenges is extremely important. The second point that I wanted to make, and I touched upon very briefly in my previous response, was around the scale. So just giving you some numbers, in 2030, more than 40% of country's population is expected to reside in urban areas. And according to our 2011 census in India, there were 46 million plus cities in India already. And the census was 2011, by the way. The country's infrastructure is set to need an investment of rupees 225 trillion in this decade. And the solutions to the future of Indian cities that are climate resilience should look at issues that around provision of basic services. Because see, questions around health and water are deeply embedded in the concept of resilience. And these services to the masses in efficient and sustainable ways, in designing, for example, mass transit system, ensuring better connectivity, solutions around mobility for the masses, solutions around waste recycling, disposal, and so on, have so much to do with long-term resilience of cities. And one of the challenge that it also has some policy implication. I mean, it's embedded in the response itself, is that we should look at second tier cities. We should look at medium-sized cities that are just taking off. They are rapidly urbanizing. They are growing, and they have little amount for infrastructure development. But if we look at these cities now, they will develop into a better, agglomeration, in terms of economic development, in terms of resilience inbuilt. So Delhi, Mumbai, and other big cities of today, even in the West and other South Asian cities, they cannot be really the icons of urban development or even quality of life in cities. So I think they will keep attracting a lot of migrants, but it is high time we start thinking about future cities in terms of our secondary cities. And um, the challenge is about how to finance technology. The challenge is about how to finance climate action. And I would say, and I'm again coming back to innovation and technology. See, there is, and it is time tested in India, particularly in South Asia for that matter, frugal innovation. It can tackle a lot of challenges faced by cities and in the design and development of solutions and services that can best meet cities' needs in rationalizing resources, and particularly public spending. So I think one should also look at frugality in the way of redefining innovation. So I think that is how, in a nutshell, I would describe the challenges as well as what could these challenges bring forth in terms of ready to use policy and implementation responses. So happy to, uh, end here.
Thank you very much, Divya. You've brought us to a very good conclusion on this discussion, and this is very great. There was someone asking some questions around displacement, and it's interesting. You have been brought up this conversation around making sure that our future cities, the future of the city, in a way, particularly when we're looking at secondary cities, focus on ensuring that there is the consideration of the provision of basic services, basic infrastructure first, and that this is embedded into technology. So it's also a point for discussion when then considering the displacement as a result of climate change issues.